Good morning and welcome to CSL Sizzling St. George. Supposed to be about 107, I think, today. So at any rate, we're very, very glad you're here. We are an open, loving, and inclusive community that supports thinking creatively and living in a deeply spiritual life. So my name is Gwen Hadley. I'm part of the Core Council. I'd like to tell you who's here with us virtually. So we have Chris McCardle, who's behind the scenes doing everything technical. We have Cheryl Barlow, who is going to provide us the beautiful music. Mary Klein, our invocation, and also our sacred covenant. And then we'll hear from we'll hear from Anita Schoeff, who will be providing the talk today. So with that being said, Cheryl, take it away.
Thank you, Gwen, and good morning, CSL St. George. We're just going to center ourselves and remind ourselves of those powerful truths of who we are. I welcome each day. I trust the divine. Choose which path to take, which thoughts to align, to find peace so sweet, the truth of my soul. It's all that I need. I have faith and know. I lead with my heart. I breathe. It's all that I know. Now I would like to invite Mary Klein, who is going to do our invocation this morning.
Good morning, everyone. If you're comfortable, I'd like to ask you to close your eyes, put your feet flat on the floor as I do the invocation. All that is making itself known is God. All that ever exists is God. All that ever fulfills itself is God. Everything in the universe comes into being through the activity of the mind of God. God is never late, hindered, or incomplete. That which is God is the fullness and the allness, the completeness and the wholeness. God is the everlasting demonstration of love. I know that I am one with God, one in God, one as God. My life is the culmination of every good thing right now. Each and every activity that takes place in my life is the life of God demonstrating its love by me. The fullness of God and the demonstration of the mind of God. This oneness is all good, and it is mine with now. I realize the very presence of God in my life. Everything in my life is orchestrated through the activity of love, demonstrating us the perfect and right time in the perfect and right way. All that I seek is already right where I am, and I do not have to earn it, to create it, or to try to manipulate it into me. It is. I am in full and complete realization of those things which I endeavor to achieve, recognizing that as I surrender, control, release and let go over things and events become the perfect expression of God. I'm willing surrender my control, perfection spirit within me to arrive and perform according to its good work. Therefore, everything in my life now allows me to take the next step in life. I am so ready. I'm so willing. I am so filled with inspiration. I am so motivated. God is alive. I sense the very activity of the mind of God in me, directing me towards the next steps in life as we move forward in the remainder of this challenging year. I live in joy. I celebrate progress. I am honored in this truth, and I do not waver. Thank you, God, for the ability to take the next step into life for the remainder of this year. And so I bless this gathering, knowing that release and let go are the foundation of everything that transpires today. We are fully open to practitioner Anita's message today and to Cheryl's message through her music, and we are receptive to knowledge from source and from each other today. And so it is.
And so it is. The lyrics for this song will be on screen. Read along, sing along, and whatever you feel comfortable with. I welcome each day. I trust the divine. Choose which path to take, which thoughts to align, to find peace so sweet, the truth of my soul. It's all that I need. I have faith and know. I lead with my heart. I breathe and expand and make room for God to better my plans, the good I desire. Away to the flow, each moment a gift. It's all that I know. Each moment a gift, each moment a gift. I have faith and know. And now we're going to go back to Mary Klein, our practitioner at CSL St. George. She is going to read our sacred reading today, which is our sacred covenant. Over to you, Mary.
Thank you. There is only one life. That life is God's life. That life is perfect. That life is my life now. In knowing that I am one with this life, I know that I am one with all of its blessings expressed, which include the presence of a new minister in my beloved spiritual community. Because I know that the highest purpose of my new minister is to express God, I therefore know that my new minister reveals wholeness. I further know that my new minister is the fulfillment of that which we believe, for it is written, let us learn to draw the divine substance down into our own lives, and as freely as it has been given to us, let us give it to others. Thus alone shall we be made whole. It's a quote from Ernest Holmes. As I stand in agreement with my beloved community, I see my new minister revealed before me as growing the center in joy and prosperity. I now intend to experience my new minister in full cooperation and agreement with my community, knowing the truth about myself, for I live the presence and the law of God. I demonstrate wisdom through the mature understanding of the wholeness of life. I am accountable and willing to take full responsibility for my actions. I participate in and support the nurturance and guidance of the community. I act from wholeness and congruence in thought, word, and action. I walk the talk. I embrace. At this time, express your own personal truth here for a brief moment. I now accept the highest expression of a new minister into my life, knowing that they are revealed in a way that expresses God and serves the highest and greatest good for all who are touched by their presence. I am so grateful, and so it is. Amen.
And so it is. Thank you so much, Mary. So our August theme is inclusion in action. And this week we're focusing on colorblind or colorful. Zach Stafford from The Guardian reminds us that ignoring someone's race isn't actually the right thing to do, while that might have good motive. He says, color blindness doesn't acknowledge the very real ways in which racism has existed and continues to exist, both in individuals and systemically. By professing not to see race, you're just ignoring racism, not solving it. Hannah Robinson of The Breeze writes, race does matter, whether intentional or not. Race is interwoven in every facet of the American experience. Race affects opportunities, perceptions, and incomes of every minority group in the U.S. Instead of turning a blind eye to the issue, Americans must first acknowledge our differences and then work to create a more accepting world. And this is certainly in alignment with our Science of Mind philosophy. And Dr. Edward Leon wrote in his column in Science of Mind magazine this month, when we know who we are and our daily practice of dwelling in the divine is strong, we become able to embrace differences, not as threats, but as the outpicturing of the divine, and therefore something to cherish. We have a special musical treat for you today by Peyton Bullitt, and he actually sings about this very thing, celebrating the creations of spirit as well as spirit itself. Peyton?
All the money that the world could hold, mountains made of solid gold, riches that could buy my dream. You are better than all these things. The prettiest face to turn their eyes, beauty that could hypnotize, the open door that looks may bring. You are better than all these things. Your love is better than life. You are the well that won't run dry. I have tasted and I have seen. Oh, you are better than all these things. Power that could shake the moon, most important one in every room. Status matched by only kings. You are better than all these things. Your love is better than life. You are the wealth that won't run dry. I have tasted and I have seen. You are better than all these things. Oh, your love is better than life. You are the wealth that won't run dry. I have tasted and I have seen. You are better than all these things. Being liked and loved by everyone, approval that outshines the sun, cheered by all who think of me. You are better than all these things. You are better than all these things. You are better. Oh, you're better. I have tasted and I have seen.
Oh, Peyton, that was wonderful. So Anita, are you here with me?
I am here.
Okay, in sizzling St. George, right?
No, I'm in nice and
Oh,
cool.
you're in Ogden. Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah.
Well, we're glad you're here and take it away.
Thank you, Gwen. I'm so excited to be here. Good morning, everyone. I want to first thank my sweet grandson, Peyton, and the Park City Community Church for that beautiful video recording. They gave me permission to share that. So we're continuing the August theme of inclusion in action. And we've got a lot of ground to cover today, so I'm just going to jump right in. The topic today is colorblind or colorful. So, have you ever thought about living in a world with no color? The sky would be white, the ground would be black, the trees and the grass would just be shades of gray, and there wouldn't be any color in flowers or birds or our pets or clothing or cars. I think it would be just really bland and kind of sad. I mean, I love color. The bigger the box of crayons, the better. So we're all familiar with the condition that we call color blindness, which affects a small percentage of people, and it causes a distortion of the way they perceive color. But that is not the color blindness I'm talking about today. I'm talking about it in a very different context. So today I'm speaking of color as variety and character that contributes to people's identity. So when I speak of color blindness, I'm going to be talking about the about being unaware of or unwilling to recognize the contribution of color to personal or group identity. So Peyton's song lyrics and the beautiful, colorful background in the video brought up so many varied and colorful ways that the Creator shows up in its creation. And I think we can all agree that color adds beauty and variety and interest and aesthetic value to our lives. And sometimes we describe a person's style or their personality as colorful, or we talk about colorful language or the colorful characters in our lives. And it's our culture that colors our expression as individuals, and our uniqueness gives color to life. Life is colorful because of infinite variety. So it's interesting to note that the CSL topics for 2020 were actually decided upon back in 2019. And who could have predicted that color, as it applies to race, would emerge right now at this time as what I think is one of the most charged and vital topics of our time. So I'm going to spend just a minute talking about that. When that seismic event of George Floyd's death happened, the world felt the tremors that shook the foundations of our political and justice and socioeconomic systems that are built on the assumption of one race's superiority over other races. And the topic of racism has just swelled like a tsunami, and we find ourselves engulfed in opportunities to become educated on the matter of racial injustice. And quite frankly, I pray that the aftershocks keep us awake until we learn how to build that world that works for all. You know, it seems like just overnight, all these books and classes and webinars and discourses have come up. And they've been there. We just haven't known about it. And now we have this opportunity to become educated. We're asked to dive into terms that may have been unfamiliar to us before, like systemic racism and white privilege and white fragility and hidden biases. And I want to learn. I've made a commitment to myself to show up for the lessons and not to shy away from the difficult or painful stuff. Now I'm watching those movies that were hard to watch before because I think it's important. So this talk isn't only about race. It's about variety amongst people that makes life colorful. So before I go any further, I want to make sure that we're grounded in just a little bit of basic science of mind philosophy. So this is how I understand it. There's one creator of everything. Everything. And it doesn't matter what we call it. We can call it source, intelligence, the universe, love, spirit, and I call it God. So whatever we name it, we live, move, and have our being in it. And that is the way that we are one. And through that oneness, we experience unity. But we're not all alike. We are unique, different, individualized expressions of that one divine essence of God. And the universe is made up of infinite varieties of the one. So we're a part of the whole, and at the same time, we are different from everyone and everything else. So our founder, Ernest Holmes, said this. Next slide, please, Chris. Unity and uniformity are not the same thing. No two blades of grass are alike. What does it mean spiritually? We have nothing to disprove and everything to prove that this individualization of the spirit in each one of us, rooted in common soil, having the characteristics and potentialities of its common background, contains what the ancients call a microcosm. We have every reason to suppose that there is, back of, within, and around every individual, the divine representation of himself as the Son of God, forever expanding. So I'm going to put out this disclaimer right now. I'm a beginner student in the subject of diversity and inclusion. And when I said yes to doing this talk and started to prepare, I got, oh, wow, I'm going to really be vulnerable in this. And I didn't know how much I didn't know. And quite frankly, I still don't. But so what I'm going to share with you today reflects my current understanding of what I have learned so far about colorblindness as it applies to honoring cultural diversity. So have you ever heard someone say, I prefer to be colorblind, I don't see color, I see people? And I know that that is said with the very best intention. But the impact of such a view is that we lose sight of the many dimensions that make people special. One's identity is intimately connected to culture and heritage and race, because these are all variables in the human experience that need to be recognized and honored. They color our personal identity. Blindness to color is an avoidance strategy. So now I'm going to ask you to consider how this also applies to groups of people who are distinguished by other factors such as religion, ethnicity, national identity, sexual identity, physical ability, or class. All of these factors are an integral part of us. And if we choose not to recognize race or any of the other cultural variables, we disregard and disrespect an important part of one's identity. We really don't get to know people or appreciate their uniqueness. So I borrowed some points from an article by John Greenberg, written for Everyday Feminism magazine, and he describes some of the negative effects of this type of colorblindness. And his article addresses racial awareness in particular, but let's consider how these points also apply to groups of people that are distinguished by the other factors that I mentioned: religion, ethnicity, national identity, sexual identity, physical ability, class. So the first point, colorblindness invalidates people's identities. It renders people invisible. And I think we've pretty much recognized that. It dishonors and ignores what makes people special. And certainly this applies to people of color. And what about the LGBTQ community? When they're waving their rainbow-colored banners, aren't they asking us to see them for who they are? The next point is colorblindness invalidates people's experiences of cultural or racial discrimination. We can't heal what we're unwilling to look at, and pretending that color doesn't matter or doesn't exist is a bypass that derails the whole process of addressing and correcting injustice. And this is particularly true in racism. The next point is colorblindness hinders the tracking of disparities between certain groups of people. And we know that tracking is an essential part of research. Supreme Court Justice Harry Blackmun said, to overcome racism, one must first take race into account. So doesn't this also apply to people living with disabilities or people with other religious identities? If we don't see them and acknowledge that inequities exist and they are bearing those, nothing will change. And so the next point I think is rather subtle, and I believe it would fall into the category of a microaggression. Colorblindness supports the mistaken attitude that white is the norm and color is not. Can you see how saying to a person of color, "I don't see color," might sound dismissive? It might imply that color is a problem. It's like saying, "I accept you despite your race." Who says that white, heterosexual, fully abled, Anglo-American Christian gets to be the gold standard? Aren't we all worthy of love and respect? And so there's one more point that I've added, Greenberg didn't mention, and that is colorblindness impedes the progress of civilization. And I'm going to explain what I mean by that. I recently read just a wonderful educational book by an acclaimed journalist named Isabel Wilkerson. And the title of her book is The Warmth of Other Suns, The Epic Story of America's Great Migration. And in it, she tells about the movement of some 6 million Blacks from the north, or from the south to the north during the time span of 1915 to the early 1970s. And so I was listening to a podcast interview with Isabel Wilkerson, in which she said that after 12 generations of enslavement, this great migration was an unleashing of genius and creativity. An unleashing of genius and creativity. And with those words, I was struck by what a huge loss it is to the progress of civilization when we suppress a culture. And I thought about all the collective story of all the immigrants that have come to this country, past and present, and how we have marginalized these people and failed to see their true colors and recognize their contributions. So Greenberg wraps up his article by saying, if you are choosing color blindness to avoid racism, you have chosen the wrong strategy. And I would add to that, if you have thought color blindness means inclusion, take another look. So I don't want to just leave you with these negative points. So what can we do to take our blinders off? Well, I've come up with about 5 strategies that can help us make our experiences more colorful. And I challenge you to come up with more because I know they're there. So number 1, embrace the beginner's mind. And that's something that we've all heard before, the beginner's mind. Start with an intent to grow and adopt an attitude of humility and curiosity and learn all you can. Study the facts about racism, the history, and bias and discrimination. Number 2, seek out color-filled opportunities. Start showing up in places where you might be the minority and intentionally diversify your experiences and relationships. Number 3, partner up with a person of color who is willing to help you learn, who's not offended by your awkward, ignorant comments and questions, someone you can trust to be straight with you. But a word of caution here, don't expect all people of color to have the time or the energy to educate you, because that's not fair. Number 4 is, I call this, perk up and speak up. When you recognize cultural bias or you hear something that's kind of, off color, question the assumptions and the generalizations and maybe offer a different perspective. And then look for the common values among the different groups of people. And number 5, accept that you will screw up, but don't give up. I told you in the beginning of my talk, I felt vulnerable giving this talk. And it felt risky to me because I don't have all the knowledge and I don't have all the skills to gracefully navigate this conversation about diversity and racism and bias. But I'm willing to learn. I need a lot more information and a lot more practice, and I might be clumsy in my to step up. And I might step in it, so to speak. But it's through my vulnerability that I will learn. And it's through my learning that I will become a part of the solution. And so I'd like to circle back now to the spiritual principle of oneness. I loved what Reverend Ray Fellis said in the August issue of Science Mind magazine. He said, in oneness, your oppression is my oppression. Your fear is my fear. I may have a different body, but oneness does not afford me a not my problem exception. And Ernest Holmes said this, Chris, our whole endeavor is to personalize the impersonal, That is, to individualize the creative spirit, God, that individual being in whom all personality is rooted. Thus, each is continuously individualizing God. He was saying that we are the colors of spirit. You know, often I use a visualization or a metaphor to kind of bring a spiritual principle to life for me and help me remember it. So I imagine picking up a kaleidoscope and looking into the eyepiece, and I see beautiful shapes and colors. But I don't know that I can turn it. Imagine all the beauty and the colors that I would be missing. We need to see people who are different from us in order to experience more of what God is. One spirit expressing through infinite variety. So now I'm going to invite you to our practice of affirmative prayer. And we call that spiritual mind treatment. And as I express my understanding of universal truth, I encourage you to let that resonate in you and to stir up your truth. So if you're comfortable, just close your eyes now. And take a deep breath. We breathe together as one body of humanity. And I recognize that there is one life, one mind, one presence and power that is known by many names. And I call it God, Spirit, Source. By whatever name, this one is life. It's my life, and it's the life of all. There's no separation between Source and its creation. And there's no separation between those who have been created. And so I speak this word for all. Right now, I make a conscious decision to open to a new appreciation for diversity within the human race. I embrace my uniqueness and the uniqueness of every person. We are the colors of spirit. I choose to really see the infinite variations amongst all people of the world. And I cherish that vast spectrum of color that we contribute to life. I welcome opportunities to connect with others deeper than surface level. When I look into another's eyes, I see myself. I discover our common values and our starting point for understanding. I get quiet. I turn off the background noise of my commentary and judgment, and I listen, not only with my ears, but with my heart. I listen to the voice of another soul. I step out, unafraid to stand for and with those who look different than me, those who have been marginalized. I welcome them to my table. I hold the vision of one world, working perfectly for the good of everyone and everything in it. And I am so grateful for this truth. I give thanks for the blessings of color and variety and unity in life. And I bless each person on their journey of colorful expression. I release my word into that law of all possibilities, knowing that Spirit always says yes to our highest good. And I just let that be. And so it is. Amen.
Thank you, Anita. That was absolutely beautiful. You know, I'm reminded of something that Stephen Covey once said, that our strength lies in our differences, not in our similarities. So thank you very much.
You're so welcome.
So some announcements, conscious contributions. Even though we're not meeting together every week, we still need to pay the bills. We still need to pay the utilities and do everything that we can so that when we're ready to get back together, we'll be ready to open. So there's many ways that you can contribute. You can do it online through Breeze. You can do it by texting, or even old snail mail. Would be happy to take your checks that way. So we do appreciate everything that you do and to support the Center for Spiritual Living in St. George. So just a big thank you in advance. So we've got virtual, but very real fellowship, and we invite you to join us on Zoom after at 12. It's in your newsletter, or it's on our website, the link to join. So we hope that you will do that. Again, we join at noon for about an hour of fellowship. So please join us if you can. Our community care circle is still quite active. So while we can't do home visits, we can do phone calls, we can send cards, we can say prayers. So please call if there's anything that our practitioners and the group of caregivers can provide you. Please call us and let us know. And our practitioners are very, very willing to do prayer for you. So please either text us, either leave something on the Gmail account, or call us, and they would be glad to pray for anything that you might need, or anything that you're so grateful for and you would like it to continue. So I hope you join me with the closing affirmation, and we can say this together. Something wonderful is happening through me right now. It is this thing called life. Life is in my mind. Life is in my body. Life is in all that I do. I am it. I embrace it, and I share it. Just the way that it is, and just the way that it's becoming. Thank you, life. And thank you for joining us. Have a blessed, beautiful week. We hope you'll join us again next Sunday. Namaste.